very happy to welcome for our first presenter, Oskar Bosson, VP Communications and IR at BioArctic. Welcome, Oskar. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for having us here today. We're very happy to be able to present at this event. I'm Oskar Bosson, and I'm the head of Communications and IR at BioArctic. We're listed on Stockholm Nasdaq Mid-Cap, and this is our disclaimer. So, we would like to think of BioArctic as a unique Swedish biopharma company. And when we say unique, we mean it in 4 different aspects. Firstly, we operate in an environment where there's a high unmet medical need and focus on treatments in those areas, specifically for Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, or similar, with a large commercial opportunity. Secondly, we have very skillful scientists and researchers working in our organization based on our founders' breakthrough discoveries around 20-25 years ago, but then also combining that with collaboration with academia, with other pharma companies, and that's what drives our company forward. We have a balanced and attractive portfolio, which I'll go into in more detail, not a one-trick pony. And finally, we're well-financed, which is not so usual for a company of our size and where we are in our projects. So looking at our project portfolio, as you can see, our main focus is Alzheimer's disease, where we have several different projects, where one, the forerunner of our products, lecanemab, is partnered with Eisai and is right now in phase 3 and will have a readout of the phase 3 data later this year in the fall. But Eisai also has other projects with this candidate, another phase 3 study, which we'll get into more details about, called AHEAD, looking at an earlier patient population. But we also have internal projects looking at other mechanisms of action in the Alzheimer's field, because even if lecanemab, our frontrunner, will be successful, Alzheimer and Alzheimer's disease is a huge field, and there will be needed a lot of different treatment opportunities for that patient population going forward. So even with a successful lecanemab, we will need, and others will need, to come up with other treatments going forward to be able to treat this disease in the most effective way. The Alzheimer's portfolio is also interesting. We have the different antibodies that we have, but on top of that, we've also now started to combine these antibodies with our brain transporter technology, which is an innovative technology of bringing these antibodies into the brain. As you might know, there's a blood-brain barrier in our brains that prevent harmful substances from getting into the brain. So it essentially protects the brain. And that also makes it difficult to get drugs and antibodies into the brain. With our brain transporter technology, we're hoping to change that, to be able to move these antibodies into the brain at a larger extent, and thereby hitting the disease where it lies and being more effective with the treatments, and hopefully to a lower dose. On top of the Alzheimer's disease area, we're also focused on Parkinson's disease. There we have 3 different projects, where one, BAN 0805, used to be partnered with AbbVie up until recently. We're now bringing that back. AbbVie has taken a strategic decision to not continue with that project, so we're taking that asset back and looking for new partnering going forward. But that's already gone through part of phase 1 and is on the verge of entering phase 2. Earlier, or late last year, we also announced that we're now working in the ALS area, and we have also combined that asset with our brain transporter technology. So that's an interesting other aspect of what we're doing in our pipeline. And finally, obviously, the blood-brain barrier technology, the brain transporter technology, which we believe could be almost an own franchise of itself should it be successful going forward. So let's look a bit about at our partnerships, because that's an essential part of what we do. We develop great assets and antibodies for neurodegenerative diseases, and then we look for partnering with large pharmaceutical companies to be able to bring these assets into the clinic and hopefully to patients in the end. We've had a long-standing relationship with Eisai, a Japanese global company who's been with us since 2005 in different research collaborations, and then also licensed lecanemab. And they're driving that project fully. We don't have any cost for the development, but we have milestone payments that have been coming through different milestones that have happened so far, and there's still around 150 million euros of milestones yet to be received, should it go all the way to the market and receive all the sales milestones possible. And on top of that, we have royalty sales on the global sale of lecanemab if it reaches the market, of high single digits. So a very successful collaboration, and as I said, on the verge of phase 3 data later this year. The AbbVie collaboration has also been fruitful for us. We've received $130 million out of the over 750 million that was in that deal. However, AbbVie took a strategic decision earlier this year to hand us back that asset, so that's a process that's ongoing right now. We're taking it back, and we're looking to find a new committed partner to drive this forward so far. But we have good data, both preclinical and clinical phase 1 data that suggests or recommends continuation to phase 2. So we're looking forward to continue developing that asset with a new partner. So some recent news in the Alzheimer's disease area and lecanemab specifically. So our partner Eisai, as I said, they're driving a phase 3 program, but they've had the opportunity with the FDA in the US to do a rolling submission under an accelerated approval pathway that is starting to submit and submitting fully before the phase 3 data is ready, available, to be able to meet the unmet need of this patient population. And they finalized that rolling submission in May this year. When FDA accepts that file within 60 days of the submission, then we have the right to a milestone of 15 million euros. The submission now means that actually there is a slight possibility that there could be an accelerated approval of this asset already this year, which we could hope for. But what we've said from the start is that the important thing here for lecanemab is the phase 3 data, expected around September this year. And then if that is positive data, then the application for the full approval and finally having the fully approved product in the market, that's when we really believe that this product could take off. So the accelerated approval and that pathway, that approval would be helpful to start building the commercial organization for Eisai and preparing for the launch of the full launch. But we're not expecting the product to take off until we have a full approval. We can also say on this product that it has both Fast Track designation in the US and what's called a prior assessment review in Japan, which means that they can send in data and what they have, Eisai, already now for the authority in Japan to sort of pre-study the data to see if it's enough and what's available for submission. So that's also something that can help speed up the process of approval once we have the phase 3 data. I should also say that this product has obviously had a phase 2 study and an OLE study of the phase 2, and Eisai continues to present these data at different congresses around the world, and so far all this data continues to support what we saw in the phase 2 study. That is, it slows down the progression of the disease, it clears the brain from amyloid in more than 80% of the patients. So it seems to be effective, but still, it's phase 3. Anything can happen, but we're very hopeful for the future. And of course, with that background, we're now starting to build a Nordic commercialization body for ourselves, because we have certain rights in the agreement with Eisai to commercialize this product in the Nordic region. So we're building a commercial organization for that. Okay, and this is I just wanted to give you some latest data out of that data I said we had for lecanemab. And this is a study that was done and recently presented where they looked at the possibility of lecanemab to actually prolong or the different stages of the disease, and that thereby slowing down the progression. And what they saw in this study was that lecanemab could slow down the disease progression with up to between 2.5 or over 3 years, depending on where in the disease you are. That means you get more time, with less trouble by the disease. That means you can take care of yourself longer, maybe live home longer, and not be dependent on others for longer time. So it's clear that this disease slows down, or this drug slows down the disease. The question is how much. And obviously this experiment, this modeling, will be updated with new data once we have the phase 3 data later this year. But it's an interesting view of looking at how much can you actually gain by a disease modifying treatment such as lecanemab. Looking at the full program that Eisai drives, they have a very, very broad clinical program for lecanemab. So it's not only the phase 3 study that I've been talking about, it's also the continuation, the continuation study of the phase 2 program that's ongoing and continuously giving us data at different congresses. But they also have this AHEAD program, AHEAD 3-4-5, which is a study where you look at people who have a buildup of amyloid in the brain, the pre-stages of Alzheimer's disease, but have not yet developed any symptoms. And they're now doing a study, a global study on 1,400 subjects to look at if you start using lecanemab at a lower dose, but much earlier in the disease progression, maybe it could slow down the disease or maybe fully stop it even. So it's more of a preventive study. And that's going to be ongoing for several years now. It's a longer treatment time, over 4 years, but we're very much looking forward to those results as well. And looking more, other things they're doing as well to broaden this program is they're looking at subcutaneous dosing. Right now it's IV dosing for lecanemab, but they're looking at subcutaneous for patients to be able to do it maybe at home in the end. But lecanemab is also, depending on the qualities it's had, it's been chosen for other studies, such as the DIAN-2 study, where they're combining lecanemab as a background amyloid treatment with a tau treatment to see if you can give even better results if you do it that way. So a broad clinical program for this asset. And why do we think that we can be successful with all these things I've said, obviously, but we like to think of it's 4 different buckets that's going to make us successful with lecanemab. First is the likelihood of success, looking at the phase 2 data and all the data we get from the continuation study, the OLE study, combined with how the Clarity AD study is designed, we believe we have good chances of getting a positive phase 3 study. We have the opportunity with positive data to be first in the US, in Japan, and the EU with a full approval. So that's also important, obviously. We have opportunities to differentiate. That goes from our binding profile, which is unique, how rapidly we clear amyloid from the brain, the tolerability profile, how quickly we get onset because we don't need to titrate, etc. And that means we also can take the full dose from day 1. And finally, we've got a broad clinical program. We're looking at other developments for this project as time goes forward. So very big opportunity here for us as well. Looking at other parts of the portfolio, obviously Parkinson's disease is our next to front runner with BAN0805. Recently we got a new patent for that in the US, or a prolonged patent, which gives us the opportunity to have patent protection all the way to 2046 in the US with the extension possibilities. So that's obviously very helpful now that we're looking for a new partner after that AbbVie decided to hand the project back. We can also say that, as I said before, the phase 1 data that was presented in September last year was very positive and suggested and supported continued development in phase 2. So that's obviously what we're looking forward to. We think this is also a big patient population with a big unmet medical need where we can make a difference with this project. And on top of that, we're expanding our ALS portfolio that we announced in November last year, with now also adding the BT technology to that project. So what can we expect of upcoming news flow? Well, as I said, the rolling submission is now already handed into the FDA. So we're looking for that clearance from the FDA that they have everything they want to that file, and then looking forward to a possible approval of that of lecanemab under the accelerated approval pathway. But obviously the biggest thing this year, and the event everybody's looking forward to, is the readout of the data of the Clarity AD study. That will happen around September, October timeframe. So that's going to be exciting. Then obviously for BAN0805, we're looking forward to take that asset back from AbbVie and starting a partnering process to find a new committed partner. And we will, of course, keep the market updated on that as well. And then other things that we hope to present as we get data and we've got the patent protection we need. So obviously things around the blood-brain barrier and how we're bringing that forward. So with that said, I would like to finish off with saying that we think that BioArctic is a great company. We've got the patients in mind, and we're built on great science with great projects. We've got great partners, and we've got great people doing all of it. So thank you very much, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation,
Thank you.
Oskar. Neurodegenerative diseases and Alzheimer's disease in particular represent a major burden, not only for the patients and the families, but for society as a whole. It's been incredibly difficult for pharma companies to develop safe and effective treatments for Alzheimer's disease. Why is it so challenging, and how is BioArctic overcoming these challenges?
Yes, so you're right. It's a huge disease. I think just this year, it's estimated that the cost of Alzheimer's disease in society around the world is 1.3 trillion US dollars. So it's a huge cost for society, but it's a big burden also for families who often become the caregivers or caretakers of these patients. And it's been difficult because the brain is a difficult thing, right? Yeah. You can't go in, you can't open up and mess around with it because it's not going to work for the patient, right? So you need to be very careful, and it's therefore also very difficult to study the disease and study diseases in the brain and come up with the right answers. Now, I think the amyloid hypothesis that we're working on, but others as well, is the right way forward. But if you look in retrospect at studies that have been done in that area, going back the last 20 years, there have been different issues that made it difficult. Firstly, what's the target that you've been looking at? For example, have you been looking in the right way of attacking the disease? Secondly is, have you had the right patient population? Have you done the pre-scans in the right way to ensure that you have the patients that actually have Alzheimer's disease? You're testing for the right thing, for example. So those are some of the things that you need to think about. And we're founded on the ideas of our Professor Lars Lundfeld from Uppsala University, which he then started BioArctic and started developing a treatment. And his discoveries was based on the fact that he found a mutation in a family in the north of Sweden called the Arctic mutation. And what he saw in that family is that these people, they developed, all of them, Alzheimer's disease at a fairly young age. And they all got amyloid in the brain, but they didn't get the plaques. So a lot of treatments have been looking to just clear the plaques in the brain, for example. But this family, a lot of amyloid, but not the plaques. They have protofibrils, so pre-stages of the plaques in the brain. So that's important. He then thought that maybe it's the protofibrils that's the issue. Maybe that's what we need to attack, the buildup, because the plat is inert. They can't move. They don't interact, right? But at the same time, sparing the monomers, because some other treatments that have been tested in the past have gone for the monomers. But the monomers, we have that abundant in our body. That has a physiological function in our body. So attacking that won't help. You need to go at the right target. So that's the first thing we're doing. We're specifically, lecanemab is specifically designed to hit the protofibrils, to take those and break those down. What we see is they don't only do that, because that's the preferred binding, they attack the protofibrils, but we also clear the plaque. So we do both. I think that's the way we're finding one way around it. And the other thing is, which we and ASI have learned from other development programs in the past, is then finding the right patient population. So everybody that's been part of the phase 2 study and now phase 3 study, there's a definite Alzheimer's disease diagnosis. That means they've had a PET scan or a CFS test to ensure that they actually have Alzheimer's disease and not some other form of dementia or similar disease that wouldn't be effective with this treatment.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings me to my next question, which is how does lecanemab compare with the recently approved aducanumab?
Yeah, so there are similarities and there are differences, right? They're both going after amyloid beta. If you look at them, compare their binding abilities, lecanemab is a much stronger A beta or amyloid beta binder. So it binds hard or more, faster, harder to amyloid beta compared to aducanumab. And secondly, aducanumab prefers plaques, whereas we, as I said before, we prefer the protofibrils. So there's a difference of mechanisms of action in those. And if you look at the data, you can see that we remove amyloid beta faster than they do, actually, than any other A beta binder that's out there right now in phase 3. And we also, at the same time, have less. There's a adverse event or a side effect that you talk about when you look at these treatment called area E. And we have a much lower area E frequency than any other. All the other A beta antibody binders, they have around 30% or so, or over 30% of area E, whereas we have below 10% or around 10%. So that's also a difference. So, and that means that we don't have to titrate. So we can go on full dose from day one, whereas aducanumab, for example, they need to titrate over 6 months before they reach actually the effective treatment dose. So that's also a difference.
And finally, very quickly, how difficult will it be to find a new partner for your Parkinson's project?
Yeah, I'm not worried at all, actually. So firstly, it's a great antibody. Secondly, when we had the previous process, when we partnered with AbbVie, that was a competitive partnering process. So we had several other companies lined up in that process, but chose AbbVie. And then thirdly, as well, what we have is a product that has great preclinical data. We have a phase 1 study, or AbbVie's done a phase 1 study that suggests continuation to phase 2. So this is an opportunity for a large pharma to come into the race of alpha-synuclein for the treatment of Parkinson's disease with a great asset and immediately becoming number 2 in that race with only Roche ahead of them. So I'm not worried. Obviously, it's going to take some time because we need to line up the companies interested. There needs to be a process and discussions and all of that. But within not too long, I hope to be able to present something or a new partner to the world.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.